Rainetta Jones, welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. I decided to reach out to you after I saw your recent interview with James Rink, the super soldier guy and secret space expert of sorts who's got his own program and he gets some interesting guests on, and you are certainly one of them, definitely worthy of having you on my show. And the thing that also, what made me want to get you on my show, I saw that you have things to talk about regarding El Dorado. I had recently watched the movie The Road to El Dorado, 2000 DreamWorks animation movie about two con men who get a map to this El Dorado place in Central America. They don't say whether it's in Mexico or somewhere in Central America. It's not in South America though, but somewhere in Central America, and that kind of, I guess, flies in the face of what you have to say, because I believe the El Dorado that you're familiar with is more in the South America area, but we'll get into that. And there's also a movie called El Dorado, just El Dorado, which features John the Duke Wayne. It's a Western movie of sorts. And if you don't want to watch those films, because as you said in my pre-show talk with you, you feel that that may taint you a little bit, you can get into why you feel that's the case. Yes, but it's interesting that I watched The Road to El Dorado and put the movie El Dorado with John Wayne on my watch later list, and then next thing I know, I see a radio interview with James Rink does with you. So I definitely watched that. I did watch that, and I definitely wanted to have you on. So without further ado, please tell us your life story from a primary source perspective, telling us who you are and what you researched and what you experienced that causes you to do this, the stuff that you do, and know this stuff that you know. I don't have Alex Jones-itis. I do not interrupt my guests. So you got the floor. But just because my last guest kind of got into her life story throughout the whole course of the show, it wasn't such a bad thing because she kept it kind of educational and fun when she did that. But still, I do have questions, and I'd like to get to those questions. And I've only got an hour and 40 minutes. The first 40 minutes or so of this interview will be free for everybody. The last 20 or so will be pay-per-view. So, Rainetta, please, your life story, primary source perspective, best of your ability. Who are you? What did you experience? You got the floor.
Okay, so thank you so much, Andrew. Again, like Andrew said, my name is Renetta Jones. I was born in Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago. And no, Trinidad and Tobago is not Jamaica. They're actually the two most southerly islands, or southernly, depending on where you're coming from, in the Caribbean. And they are an oil-rich, gas-rich country. A little tidbit of information: 70% of the oil and gas, well, mostly gas now, that is produced by Trinidad comes to the United States, and the urea as well. It comes to the United States. So we have very good relationships with the US, with the United States and the US government, and hopefully we can keep that relationship strong. So, before I get into El Dorado, I'll just tell you a little bit about the supernatural side of my life. My first supernatural experience was between the ages of, I would say, 9 to 13. And I believe it was before 13. I was in my room with my aunt in Trinidad, in Belmont Circular Road. And in my room, it was nighttime.
Hold on. Sorry, whoa, hold on. You're
Came
breaking
and
up. You're
said to
breaking up. It's kind of hard to hear you. You sound
I'm
like you're
breaking up.
underwater. Well, now you're not. I could hear you're fine, but the last 10 seconds or so before I heard Trinidad and Tobago, you were sounding like you were underwater. Now I hope
Really?
the NSA or CIA isn't
Oh
sabotaging
God.
this program. But
Okay.
but
That would
anyhow,
be the
just start from the
NSA.
beginning. You just go back. You try to rewind what you would have been talking
Okay.
about. 20
Let me try to
seconds. Yeah.
unplug the headphones. Let me unplug these headphones. How about I
Okay.
try that?
See if that works. Okay.
Okay, let's see. Okay, is that any better?
Wow, you do sound a little more clear now. But although now I
Okay.
hear myself echoing.
Oh
Oh,
God.
okay. So well, hopefully that won't be a problem for long. Hopefully, I guess the listeners will have to deal with that. If that's what's going to keep you from sounding underwater, then now I don't. Now I don't hear myself echoing. Maybe it was just temporary. All right. Well, I will
Okay.
put myself on mute when you're talking, of course. So let's start again. Yeah, you started bubbling, and then I heard Trinidad and Tobago, and then you started bubbling once
Okay.
again.
All right.
So
No
here we
problem.
go.
So, okay. So again, my name is Renetta Jones. I was born in Trinidad and Tobago. the two most southerly island in the Caribbean. And no, Trinidad and Tobago is not Jamaica. They are two separate islands, and you know the Caribbean is about 200, I think, islands. I might be wrong on that number. Countries, I think. No, not 200 countries. I'm sorry. Islands. I might be wrong on that number. So anyway, so Trinidad is a gas country. They used to be an oil and gas country. Now it's mainly gas. And a little bit of facts about Trinidad: 70% of the gas produced by Trinidad comes directly to the United States. So it's a pretty resource-rich country. By the way, Trinidad is literally 8 miles off the coast of Venezuela. And a little bit of information about Tobago. Tobago was one of the most sought after islands. I'm just giving you a background so you know the location and some details. During the time of slavery, Tobago was one of the most fought over islands that exchanged hands the most out of all the islands in Tobago, with the last being the British, who unified both Trinidad and Tobago, right? And Trinidad geographically is located literally 8 miles off the coast of Venezuela. That's at the nearest point. And then the most southerly point of Trinidad this is where it gets really interesting, is where you get the Orinoco River. And if you know anything about that river, it will begin to explain what we're going to be talking about today. So, but before we get there, I would like to start with my early childhood supernatural experiences prior to coming to the United States. I came to the United States at the age of 14. Prior to that, I grew up with my aunt in Trinidad. My first supernatural experience was between the ages of 9. Actually, it was earlier, but the most prolific ones was between the ages of, I think it was 9 to 13. I know for a fact it was before 13, right? And that was when an entity, and supernatural experiences in the Caribbean is like, it's literally like it happens all the time. And I'm now, as I get older, I'm beginning to understand what these things are. Whereas when you're younger, it's like, it's very scary. So the first supernatural experience I had was an entity came to my room, and the entity told me very clearly, when you grow up, do not have children. You will understand when you get older. And that stuck with me. You know, the entity didn't give me a name. Usually they do. I didn't know, you know, like where it came from or whatever, but it was very firm. It said, whatever you do not have children. You'll understand when you get older, right? And then when I was 13, at 13 is when I experienced my first menstrual cycle, right? But in between my first, and this is a supernatural experience, in between my first menstrual cycle and my second menstrual cycle, I remember distinctly, this was maybe like 2 weeks after the first, I remember distinctly going to bed on a Thursday, and I said to myself on a Thursday, hey, I got one more day of school and then it's the weekend. I remember saying that. However, when I went to bed that Thursday night, I ended up waking up Sunday afternoon. And I didn't wake up on my own. I was awakened by my aunt's son. When I woke up in a pool of blood, okay? And menstrual blood. Remember, I'm 13. So I'm like, whoa, what is this? So I'm thinking in my head, like, I thought they told me that your menstrual cycle comes once a month. I was like, I just had it. And that's literally what I was thinking. So my aunt said to me, you know, just go clean up or whatever. And that's what I did. And I know this may sound, you know, this may sound like, whoa, she's like really going there. But this is important because It's when I got older, that's when I realized that what happened to me was I was implanted. I disappeared for 3 days. And when I came back in a pool of blood. Well, better yet, I was out for 3 days. Here's the funny thing. If you knew my aunt, okay, you would know that there's no way in hell I was the only girl in the house. And growing up in the Caribbean then, the girls took care of everything inside of the house, and the boys took care of everything outside of the house. So, understanding the culture I grew up in, there's no way on earth my aunt would let me sleep for 3 days. It just was not gonna happen. So I was in a state of confusion, like, how did I wake up on Sunday and I just had my period? This is weird. The next period I had, which should have been the second one. Oh, by the way, when I took a shower, literally within like a couple of hours, that so-called menstrual cycle stopped. Okay, so that made me have even more confusion. I was like, hold on, how is my period, like an hour, 2 hours? That's strange, you know? So, that stuck with me for many years, many years, trying to figure that out. And, my aunt was a very, very like conservative type person, to the point you could even have a conversation with her about girl things. Like, she would just tell you, okay, this is girl thing, this is what it is, this is how you take care of yourself, that's about it. You know what I mean? So I couldn't really go to her and say, hey, listen, I went to bed on a Thursday, woke up on a Sunday. What happened? I woke up in none of those things, right? Okay, so fast forward, that's when later on, when I went to work at the UN, after I moved to the United States, I moved to the United States at 14. I went to a high school, Martin Luther King Jr. High School. That high school is a whole, surrounding that high school is a whole other interview by itself. And all the things that came with it, being followed by, extremely blonde men with very blue eyes, I mean, my high school alone is an interview by itself. So, but we're not here for that today. So let's fast forward to the UN. So I came to the United States at 14. I went to Martin Luther King Jr. High School from 14 to 17. I graduated early, 1 year early. I went to university at Buffalo. This is a whole other interview by itself, but I was hit with, I learned later on with what they call brain scrambling technology, so that I wouldn't go into molecular microbiology. And it wasn't until this whole COVID outbreak that I realized that I was being steered away from that field, because, that field is extremely corrupt, and that I look back and for many years I was very sad, but I look back and I realized, I say, oh my God, something saved my life. That I didn't go into that field, because it's very manipulated, and, the scientists aren't free. It's very dangerous for them. So anyway, fast forward. Anyway, I graduated from Empire State College with a degree in business administration. And today I just work for myself, doing consultations. So that's a little bit of my background. But let's fast forward to when I was 30 and I went to go work at the United Nations, right? And that in and of itself was just a completely strange, okay? That's a whole other interview by itself, right? So when I went to go work at the UN, a lot of strange anomalies, occurred. Like in the month of August, like I received a phone call to work at the UN September 20th. August of 2010 I was walking in Central Park. This is just a little bit of background of the anomalies that happened to me leading up to El Dorado. So 2010, I'm walking in Central Park near the boathouse. This is New York, right? There's a lawn across the street from the boathouse. And I was there during the week when there was no one on that lawn, okay? There was literally no one. And I used to love walking through the park and looking at the trees because I just have this affinity for the elements and for nature. All of a sudden, as I'm walking, I looked ahead of me. There was no one in front of me. And I'm looking up and I'm walking and I feel something hit me and push me out of the way. And being my little feisty self, I turned around and I was going to give that person a couple of hot words. When something said to me, shh, don't speak. And I looked at this scene. I said, first of all, where the hell did they come from? There was no one on this lawn. That's what I was saying in my head. And I was literally going to chew these people out when something said to me, do not speak. So I looked at this scene and I see this short, I mean extremely short man that kind of reminded me a little of a penguin. I'm not being insulting, I'm just saying, he just kind of walked like a penguin. And he was flanked on 4 sides by these, they were like 6'7", jet black, and it's not the first time I encountered men that look like this, and I do not believe these people are human. 6'7", jet black, hulked out. I don't know what these men were, okay? And they were flanked on all 4 sides with these tiny man in the middle. This is August. I said to myself, what the hell am I seeing? And somebody just said to me, shh, whatever you do, don't say anything. Okay, come September, I get a phone call. And that in and of itself was very, very peculiar. And that proved to me that we're all being tracked. Every human being on this planet is monitored by non-human forces. Okay, the phone call was basically, come for an interview to work at the UN. Go to the interview. The interview was like, yeah, literally. The interview at the UN was like, yeah. Can you do the job? I can. You're hired. This is what you need to do. That's how the interview went. Start working at the UN. My first day at the UN, I'm coming out of the back building. By the way, the man that came out of thin air was Henry Kissinger. Okay. I'm on the UN compound and I'm coming from the back end of the building. Okay. And this is leading up to El Dorado. And it was a cold day. And I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't wear a proper jacket. So I was coming towards the exit or the entrance. Okay, this is UN headquarters. And I had my head bent because it was very icy and my jacket was really light. All of a sudden, I'm literally walking and I felt like I walked straight into a wall. Like I hit my head against the wall and I looked up like, hey, there's nothing in front of me. As I looked up, I see these 2 very short men coming from the white building. Okay, so the white building in the UN headquarters is where you see the people who are orchestrating what is going on this planet. All of the policies, it comes out of that white building. Okay, and that white building is regulated to the entities that determine who lives and who dies and what gets done on this planet, that white building. So I see these 2 very short men come out of the white building. And it was as if, and I'm already psychic, but as I'm looking at the men, I could read the same thing that happened to me with Kissinger, even though I didn't know his name when he came out of thin air, flanked by four, I don't know what to call them. They looked human, but I was like, these men are not human. And when I looked at these men, okay, I said, these men look like they came from Saturn. I kid you not, okay? Now, white building. Now, I looked at the two men coming out of the building, and it was as if I could read their DNA and I could read their status. I don't know how I did it. It was just in front of me. Okay. So I looked at them and I said, so that's strange. I went to take one step and I took one step forward and literally was frozen in stasis, broad daylight, UN headquarters compound. The two short men, one of them looked like a king. That is what I saw when I looked at him. His energy field, the biofield that resonated from him, was at least 30 to 50 feet resonant frequency coming off of him. His resonant frequency was so strong, I was suspended in stasis, broad daylight on the UN headquarters compound. The person next to him, again, I could read their energy field. And he looked like he was his secretary. So he literally was a king, and the guy advising him was his secretary. The king and his secretary walked directly in front of me and started to telepathically communicate with me. I could not move. Broad daylight, could not move. Before he started communicating with me, he was looking directly at me. And I can tell you, because it happened to me twice, I can tell you how people get abducted. I can tell you exactly what happens, because this happened to me when I was in the UN headquarters compound. While he was staring directly at me, I felt like my spirit, which is anchored to my body, and most people think that what keeps you grounded to the earth is the weight of your body, okay? The weight of your body and the gravitational forces pushing you towards the earth. I learned something very peculiar because this happened to me twice. It's not your physical body that grounds you to the earth, it's your spirit. While he was looking at me, he did something with his mind, or it could have been something in his hand, because he walked with his hand behind his back and his chest arched out. He looked at me, and my spirit, I felt like someone unplugged my spirit from my physical body, and my spirit started lifting up out of my body. When my spirit started lifting, I felt like my physical body started lifting. But something said no, and then my spirit dropped back in my body and pushed my physical body back to the ground. He did that 2 more times. He did, like, he unhooked my spirit, like it was anchored, like he pulled the anchor, and my spirit started to lift, my physical body started to follow, and then something said no, and it dropped back down in my body. Okay? When that didn't work, I entered this, I should have said this part first. I entered into this vortex, okay? It was literally spinning around me. I felt energy, a massive amount of energy, like not like a toroidal energy, but kind of like an upright dryer. You know, like if you go to a laundromat, the way the dryers are, but it was spinning at a speed so fast it made no sense. I entered into this energy vortex, and I literally felt the energy particles around me spinning at a speed I couldn't control, but I could not move, I could not think, I could not speak. Okay? That, and then after, when that energy field kept spinning, that's when he tried to separate my spirit from my body, but that failed. When that failed, this is what this king said to me. He didn't tell me where his kingdom was, and I'm looking at this man and I said, this man is not human. That's literally the only thing my spirit could say, was, this man is not human. Not in my head, because my head was on lock. It was deep in my spirit. This man is not human. When that was over, he said to me, before he left, before he released me from stasis, he said, we know who you are. We know who you are. He kept telling me telepathically, we know who you are. But I couldn't respond. When he was done, he released me from this energy field, this vortex, and then he just kept on walking. And then when he finally disappeared, I could move again. I was released and I was able to move again. From that day, that's when I could not be around computers, cell phones, anything connected to the grid I was connected to. And that's when I realized, I said, oh shit, I have technology in my body. That experience with him turned it on. The second thing that started happening to me was that now my body became like a two-way antenna. I could receive communications inside of my body, and I can communicate just with my thoughts, and the people on my networks can hear. So he turned on, he knew I had technology in my body, and he turned it on. Okay. Not only that, that's when I began to like, oh my God, what happened to me? Because then when they first turn on the technology, it's a surge of radiation that goes through your body. But I'm not going to get into that right now. So that's kind of like the pathway that I was on. And then I became actively targeted because now, the technology's on, and if you're down the path of a spiritual being, that's when the war occurred. So we're getting to El Dorado now. So because of that and some other factors, I literally had to run out of the United States. I ran out of the United States literally in the middle of the night, and I ran to hide in Trinidad, running from the US government, which didn't work. And I'll tell you why. Running from the UN and the entities at the UN, and no one can tell me otherwise. The UN has been taken over by aliens. Actually, probably not taken over, but the UN is run by extraterrestrials. Like, no one will convince me otherwise. I encountered them. And I encountered someone extremely high ranking. Okay, Henry Kissinger came out of a portal. He was flanked. No one is going to tell me I didn't see this. He was flanked by 4 men that was like 7 feet tall, jet black. And I looked at them and I said, these men are not human. And subsequently, when I ran to Trinidad, the exact same 4 men showed up in my neighborhood in Trinidad. The exact same thing happened. How is that possible? That's a whole other experience by itself. But we're getting to El Dorado, right? So I run to Trinidad, running away from the US government, running away from the UN, running away from the international media.
Well, actually, hold on. I need to violate the, I don't interrupt you, but before we get to El Dorado, this encounter here, I think it's definitely worth elaborating on for just a few seconds here. Now, to be confronted by Henry Kissinger, a couple questions there. First of all, was that the real Henry Kissinger? Because a couple sources have said at least one occasion Henry Kissinger has been cloned, and also you got people that like I believe Kathy O'Brien, before David Icke even came along and popularized the reptilian alien shapeshift thing, that she claimed that she saw George Bush, the older George Bush, and Henry Kissinger shapeshift into reptile aliens. Don't know if Henry Kissinger, that shapeshift, was a clone or the original Henry Kissinger. But to be confronted by him is definitely a sign that you're on the right track to being a threat to the New World Order. It was brought to my attention that that may be the weak link in Donald Trump's chain. The fact that, I shouldn't have said his name because now I'm on YouTube. But anyhow, I'm not worried about that. Anyhow, when Trump was confronted by Kissinger in, I think it was May of 2017. That was basically so Kissinger could tell him, do what my means and I tell you to do, or else you and your family will be dead. Apparently, Trump though is not was not going to like give into that fear so much, because shortly before he lost lost in quotes the re-election bid in that joke of an election, he actually did give Kissinger the boot off the White House advisory panel. Um, that's basically trying to tell Kissinger, I'm not scared of you. Forget you threatened me back in 2017. I'm not going to let you control me anymore. Um, Although the guy, for all intents and purposes, Kissinger, could be considered the de facto Emperor Palpatine of planet Earth. It is Klaus Schwab. Klaus Schwab, he heads the World Economic Forum, but he has said that Henry Kissinger has influenced him the most. So you could basically think that Klaus Schwab refers to Kissinger as his master and almost certainly communicates with him. I seriously refuse to think, it doesn't even make sense to me to think that Kissinger is just sitting in a rocking chair waiting to die any day now, as most people say he probably is. The guy is doing no such thing. He's been trying to push a New World Order agenda for decades, and to think that he's just going to give in and surrender, no, he intends to ride that New World Order horse till it falls down dead. And even if he means having to kill his own partners, Benjamin Fulford, love him, hate him, whatever, he did actually say that Queen Elizabeth did not die of natural causes. She was killed by a direct energy death ray, and it was Kissinger was the wizard behind the curtain that pulled that direct energy death ray. I can only imagine the reason. If it's true, why would he kill the Queen of England? Probably because he doesn't want to have any allies that hate him just as much as they love him, and he would rather just continue pushing the New World Order agenda that he is almost certainly going to lose, but doesn't want to act like he thinks that, so he can be the Emperor Palpatine over everything. So so basically, in a nutshell, do you actually think you were confronted by the real Henry Kissinger, and do you think that as long as the guy remains alive, the New World Order is going to continue to stay alive, and so when he's dead, that's when we should really be singing "Ding Dong, the Wicked Bastard is dead," because that will be like the ultimate nail in the coffin that says, okay, humanity has great things. There's no wizard behind the curtain controlling world affairs. It's smooth sailing toward paradise. Or do you think I'm giving him too much glory there when I
Okay.
say that?
Well, I'm going to tell you what I felt that day. I knew. I'll tell you what I know, and I'll tell you what I felt. I knew there was nothing in front of me. There was no one on that lawn when I walked on that lawn, and that lawn is about 150 meters. There was no one there, okay? The only way they could have gotten on that lawn, and they came in front of me, is they came through a portal, okay? And that was broad daylight. When that happened to me, and then September, that happened to me in August, and September, I get a call to come to work to the UN, at the UN. When I look back, like a year later, okay, this was with the whole Syria debacle, and I saw Henry Kissinger sitting on a stage talking about Syria. I said, oh my God, that's the man that came through the portal, okay? Now, I'll tell you what I felt. I felt that when he came through that portal, he came through that portal to see me. His bodyguard. They were very nasty to me and pushed me out of the way. I mean, they pushed me like that. I sensed, I said, these people hate humans. That's what I felt. Okay, there's a deep hatred I felt. Not for me, but for just human beings in general, like we're beneath them. When the bodyguard pushed me out of the way, and by the way, the bodyguard was jet black, but all four of them. But when I looked at them, I said, these people aren't human. Okay? So I did not see Kissinger shapeshift into lizard. However, I have been in the presence of a Draco. I don't know if you want to hear that story. Okay, regarding the power structure, and regarding Trump, I only saw Trump in New York once, when he was coming out of Trump Towers on Columbus Circle. But I went to Vegas. I was invited to Vegas with Trump's business partner. I don't know if they're still business partners now, who owns a couple of hotels in Vegas. Okay. And the guy was he was perfectly fine. He treated me perfectly fine. I was there with a couple of friends and he treated me fine, so I don't have anything nasty to say, you know. But then again, I don't do business, you don't do business with them. They could treat you fine as a woman, but then when it comes to business, they could be a different person. Or they would treat you, nicely and then do some underhanded things behind your back. I don't know. All I know is, but here's what I will tell you. When I was coming back, with Trump's business partner, we flew on his private jet back to New York, and this is a true story. When we were coming into JFK, all of a sudden the pilot, he was at the time, I think he said 30 years Air Force pilot. Okay. The pilot at the time said, listen, we're flying into a storm. A storm literally pulled up and was hovering over JFK. It sat on the JFK, over JFK. And the pilot said, listen, we're pulling into this weird storm that's like hovering over JFK. So he thought, after working 30 years as a pilot, he could fly into this storm. And he flew into it and the plane almost crashed. It was just myself and Trump's partner on the plane. My friend took another plane. And Trump's business partner was literally like, he was freaking out. And I literally had to calm him down and say, listen, you cannot go in there. You cannot go into the cockpit and demand the pilot land the plane. You're going to get us killed. So I had to tell him, I said, listen, calm down, sit down, calm down. He's going to land the plane. The pilot had to literally pull out of the storm that was sitting over JFK, and he landed in a field in Pennsylvania. When we got off the plane, Trump's partner was like, he was like shaking like crazy. And he said to me, Rainetta, how the hell were you so calm? By the way, you're the first person I'm actually telling this story to in an interview, okay? He goes, Rainetta, how are you so calm? I said, I knew we weren't going to die. He said, I'm not taking any more private jets anytime soon, just like that. And he's like, call her a limousine. And he calls me his driver. And he goes, my driver's going to drive you back to New York. We're not taking any planes. And then he took his limousine and he gave me a limousine. But the funny thing is, the pilot said to me, he said, Miss Jones, he said, I've been an Air Force pilot for 30 years. He said, I've never seen anything like that. He said, and you were so calm. I said, I knew we weren't going to die. He was like, huh. I mean, everybody was shaking. And I was just like, So anyway, so I came back home. So that was my experience. I mean, I never met Trump, but I did meet one of his business partners. And for the most part, he treated me respectfully. So, whatever, whatever you want to make of that. But regarding the reptiles, I will tell you this unequivocally, okay, that David Icke is not making it up, okay? I encountered, matter of fact, I was set up by my friend, but I don't want to say, I'll tell you the name privately, but I won't say who it is, and it's someone who the FBI arrested 2 years ago. They have a private island. And on this private island, the person was tricking women to go to this island, getting them pregnant, killing the baby before before the baby came to term, draining the child of its blood and the stem cells, and then injecting themselves with the stem cells. So this is a friend of mine, I'm not going to say the name, introduced me to, and wanted me to date him. And, even though I was like, I used to party a lot, I was modeling, I had a bit of morality to me, and I said to my friend, I said, look, there's no way in hell I'm dating your ex-boyfriend. She goes, no, Rainetta, it's okay, I was like, I was like, you people in California are crazy. I'm like, there's no way in hell I'm dating your ex-boyfriend. So anyway, she kept telling me, she said, Rainetta, at the time, you a broke model in New York. She goes, Renata, you don't have to be poor. He'll buy you an apartment. And she said, you see all these expensive clothes I have? He'll buy you whatever you want. He really wants to date you. And I said to her, I said, listen, I am not dating your ex-boyfriend. Forget it. Anyway, long story short, is she was going back to California. And she said, hey, Renata, I'm going back to California. Can you come visit me in the hotel? And I was like, okay, yeah, sure, because I don't know when I'm going to see you. So I went to the hotel. Get to the hotel. I said, hey, whatever, whatever. After 10 minutes, I said, hey, listen, can I use the bathroom? She goes, yeah, sure. She was in a suite. So you walk in, it's the living room, the kitchen, and then the bathroom, the bedroom at the back. And then in the bedroom, next to it is the bathroom, right? So I leave the living room and I go to the bedroom. And I said, oh my God, I'm not going to say his name. Let's say his name is John. Okay. So, oh my God, John, I didn't know you were here. I was like, I was here all this time and you didn't even come out and say hi. He was like, hi, Rainetta. I was like, that's strange. I was like, he's been hiding in this bedroom all this time and she didn't even tell me. Anyway, so I go use the bathroom. And this is a true story, and it's not the only time it's happened to me. Okay, I opened the door to come out of the bathroom. Normally, this man is about 6'6". Okay, no, okay, he's over 6 feet tall. And the reason why I know that is because when I wear heels, I'm about 6'2". Okay, and he was still taller than me. So I'm like, he's about between 6'4", 6'6". Okay. And when I'm in heels, I can look at him somewhat eye to eye. Okay, and in those days when I was younger, because I used to model, I never used to wear flat shoes unless I was like, dancing in the park or whatever, which is like a New York tradition. And I'm telling you this to let you know that these entities are real. I've encountered them, okay, and multiple kinds of them, and I don't know why they gravitate to me. So this is why I got the hell out of New York, because I'm like, I can't take this anymore. And they do believe in slavery, by the way.
Oh, no
And
question they do. By the way, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but keep
yeah,
in mind I wanted to keep this to about an hour, and
okay,
well, unfortunately at this point it's probably going to be pay-per-view onward. But I used to do 2-hour interviews, but that cost me dearly in terms of view count because humans
okay,
by nature have lousy attention spans. So ever
okay,
since then, I've cut down to about an hour. Maybe I'll go a little bit more with you, just because you like to talk about these things. It's very interesting, by the way. I love hearing what I'm hearing. It's very catchy and all. But we got to get to El Dorado, of course.
okay, okay,
Even though
okay,
people can listen to James Rink's interview with you to get into that, I do want to touch on a few things, and I do need to make the announcement. Like I said, if you want to listen to the stuff about El Dorado, folks, in this interview and anything else that we may touch on, including the services that Rainetta offers, I'll let her make a sales pitch out of any services she offers before this interview is done. You have to listen to that in the unabridged version of this interview, which will only be available to Patreon subscribers. So, with that being said, please finish up what you were talking about on this reptilian alien meetup subject, and then let's get into El Dorado.
okay, no problem. So I'll